Excellent. Hello, and welcome to Oak Tree English poetry live stream. This is the first time I've done it this way, so things might be a little bit different than expected, but let's keep going. I'm still on a learning curve. Still be gracious with me, please. Ever actually learnt by heart. It's written in a London dialect, so forgive me, anyone from London who happens to hear this and thinks, we are sharing all that. So forgive me. It's called Gunga Din by Rudyard Kipling. You may talk of gin and beer when you're caught safe out here and you're sent to penny fights and order shot it. But when it comes to slaughter, you will do your work on water and you'll lick the blooming boots of him what's got it. Now, in India's sunny clime, where I used to spend my time, a servant of Her Majesty the Queen, of all them black-faced crew, the finest man I knew was our regimental bistie, Gunga Din. He was din, 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 you limping lump of brick dust, Gunga Din. I slippy in the row, want to get it panny low, you squidgy-nosed old idol, Gunga Din. The uniform he wore was nothing much afore, rather less than half of that behind. For a piece of twisty rag and a goatskin water bag was all the field equipment he could find. When the Swen troop train lay in a siding through the day, with heat would make your bloomin' eyebrows crawl. We shouted, "Harry by!" till our throats were bricky dry. Then we whopped him, because he couldn't serve us all. It was din, din, din. You heathen, where the mischief have you? They never didn't seem to know the use of fear. If we charged or broke or cut, you could bet your bloomin' nut he'd be waiting 50 paces, right flank rear. With his mussick on his back, he would skip with our attack and watch us till the bugles made retire. And for all his dirty hide, he was white, clear white inside, when he went to tend the wounded under fire. It was din, 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 with the bullets kicking dust spots on the grin. When the cartridges ran out, you could hear the front rank shout, "Aye, ammunition mules and Gunga Din!" I shan't forget the night when I dropped behind the fight with a bullet where my belt plate should have been. I was choking mad with thirst, and the man that spied me first was our good old grinning, grunting Gunga Din. He lifted up my head and he plugged me where I bled. He gave me half a pint of water green. It were crawling and it stunk. But of all the drinks I've drunk, I'm gratefullest to one from Gunga Din. It was din, din, din. Here's a beggar with a bullet through his splin. He's chewing up the ground and he's kicking all around. For God's sake, get the water, Gunga Din. He carried me away to where Dooley lay, Din. So I'll meet him later on at the place where he has gone, where it's always double drill and no canteen. He'll be squatting on the coals, giving drinks to poor damned souls. And I'll get a swig and ale from Gunga Din. Yes, Din, 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 you Lazarusian leather Gunga Din. I've belted you and flayed you by the living God that made you. You're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. People sometimes complain about this being a racist poem because it uses language which has today got racist connotations. And you may not have appreciated my attempt at an Indian accent there. But the last line really makes it clear to me that there was no racism in Kipling's words. By the living God that made you, you're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. Sticking with Rudyard Kipling, who is my favourite poet, I'm going to be completely self-indulgent. As far as I know, I have no viewers at the moment. Certainly no one's chatting. So I'm just going to please myself. This is, I think, my favourite poem, or was for a long time. I haven't read it for a while, so it might not be. Who knows? Let's see what happens. So they said, and I believed it, broke my land and sowed my crop. Built my barns and strung my fences in the little border station. tucked away below the foothills, where the trails run out and stop. Till a voice, as bad as conscience, rang interminable changes, in one everlasting whisper, day and night repeated so. Something hidden, go and find it, go and look behind the ranges. Something lost behind the ranges, lost and waiting for you. Go. So I went, worn out of patience, never told my nearest neighbours, stole away with pack and ponies, left them drinking in the town, and the faith that moveth mountains didn't seem to help my labours, as I faced the sheer main ranges, whipping up and leading down. March by march I puzzled through 'em, turning flanks and dodging shoulders, hurried on in hope of water, headed back for lack of grass, till I camped above the tree line, drifted snow and naked boulders, felt free air stir to windward, knew I'd stumbled on the pass. Thought to name it for the finder, but that night the norther found me, froze and killed the plains-bred ponies, so I called the camp Despair. Go you there. Then I knew, the while I doubted, knew his hand was certain o'er me. Still, it might be self-delusion. Scores of better men had died. I could reach the township living, but he knows what terror tores me. But I didn't. I went down the other side, till the snow ran out in flowers, and the flowers turned to aloes, and the aloes sprung to thickets, and a brimming stream ran by. But the thickets twined to thorn scrub, and the water drained to shallows, and I dropped again on desert, blasted earth, and blasting sky. I remember lighting fires. I remember sitting by 'em. I remember seeing faces, hearing voices through the smoke. I remember they were fancy, for I threw a stone to try 'em. Something lost behind the ranges was the only word they spoke. I remember going crazy. I remember that I knew it when I heard myself hallooing to the funny folk I saw. Very full of dreams, that desert. But my two legs took me through it, and I used to watch 'em moving. And I lay a week recruiting, got my strength and lost my nightmares. Then I entered on my find. Thence I ran my first rough survey, chose my trees and blazed and ringed 'em. Week by week I pried and sampled. Week by week my findings grew. Saul, he went to look for donkeys, and by God he found a kingdom. But by God, who sent his whisper, I had struck the worth of two. Up along the hostile mountains where the hair-poised snowslide shivers, down and through the big fat marshes that the virgin ore-bed stains, till I heard the mile-wide mutterings of unimagined rivers, and, beyond the nameless timber, saw illimitable plains. Plotted sites of future cities, traced the easy grades between them, watched unharnessed rapids wasting 50,000 head an hour, counted leagues of water frontage through the axe-ripe woods that screen 'em, saw the plant to feed a people, up and waiting for the power. Well, I know who'll take the credit. All the clever chaps that followed. Came a dozen men together, never knew my desert fears. Tracked me by the camps I'd quitted, used the water holes I'd hollowed. They will rediscover rivers, not my rivers heard at night. By my own old marks and bearings, they will show me how to get there. By the lonely cairns I builded, they will guide my feet aright. Have I named one single river? Have I claimed one single acre? Have I kept one single nugget, barring samples? No, not I. Because my price was paid me 10 times over by my maker. But You wouldn't understand it. You go up and occupy. Ores you'll find there, wood and cattle. Water transit sure and steady. That should keep the railway rates down. Coal and iron at your doors. God took care to hide that country, till he judged his people ready. Then he chose me for his whisper, and I found it, and it's yours. Yes, your never, never country. Yes, your edge of cultivation. And no sense in going further till I cross the range to sea. God forgive me. No, I didn't. It's God's present to our nation. As a boy, I thought this was just a fun adventure story, and so it is. It is a fun adventure story with ups and downs and highs and lows and all the wonderful things that go with it. Then I went to university and I started going to church for the first time properly of my own free will, and I found that this actually isn't just a nice adventure story, because I had the experience of the whisper and found something infinitely bigger and better. But that's another story for another channel. Right now, what you want to hear is a nice poem that you remember from childhood. So let's go and talk about Mr. Edward Lear, particularly his famous poem, The Owl and the Pussycat. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a £5 note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are. You are, what a beautiful pussy you are. Said pussy to owl, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried. There in a wood. And there in a wood a piggywig stood, with a ring at the end of his nose. His nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring? Said the piggy. I will. So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. And they dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon. And hand in hand, on the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon. The moon, they danced by the light of the moon. Now, we're going to turn to some Yeats. I might have got this wrong, so you guys who actually know a lot more about poets than I do, please feel free to correct me. But I believe Yeats is the chap who had this unrequited love throughout his life, which really drove a lot of his poetry. And this is one of, but he wrote some of the most beautiful poems in the English language, possibly. Really, Yeats. When you are old and grey and full of sleep, and nodding by the fire, take down this book, and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with a love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing. Murmur a little sadly how love fled, and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. So now you're feeling thoroughly depressed. Let's go to Lewis Carroll. I told you before about Lewis Carroll, fellow of Christ Church College, Oxford, writer, of course, of Alice in Wonderland and through Alice Through the Looking Glass, and also talented poet who wrote humorous verse as well as other things. He was a fellow of, he was a professor? Maybe not professor. He was a teacher of mathematics anyway at Christchurch. Well worth of his. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think, at your age, it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and you have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason for that? In my youth, said the sage as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling a box. Allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife. And the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. You are... What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs. Jenny Joseph wrote another poem about old age called Warning. I think it's one we should take seriously, and all of Jenny Joseph's friends should certainly take seriously. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals, and say we've no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired, and gobble up samples in shops, and press alarm bells, and run my stick along the public railings, and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain, and pick flowers in other people's gardens, and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat and eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and pickle for a week, and hoard pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. To dinner and read the papers. But maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and start to wear purple. When I was a young lad, about 5, I guess, my grandma was in hospital. This is a fairly normal experience in people's lives, I believe. And I remember going to see my grandma in hospital. We took her Lucozade. Still not entirely sure why. Revolting stuff. Please don't tell the Lucozade company I said that. But I'm sure the recipe has improved since what we took. But I remember that my dad said that my grandma would very much like it if I could recite a poem for her. So the poem that I was able to recite was the chorus line from this one, which is called A Smuggler's Song by, yeah, you guessed it, Rudyard Kipling. If you wake at midnight and hear a horse's feet, don't go drawing back the blind or looking in the street. Them that ask no questions isn't told a lie. Laces. 25 ponies trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk, laces for a lady, letters for a spy. And watch the wall, my darling, while the gentlemen go by. Running round the woodlump, if you chance to find little barrels roped and tarred, all full of brandy wine. Don't you shout to come and look, nor use 'em for your play. Put the brushwood back again, they'll be gone next day. If you see the stable door setting open wide, if you see a tired horse lying down inside, if your mother mends a coat cut about and tore, if the lining's wet and warm, don't you ask no more. If you meet King George's men dressed in blue and red, you be careful what you say, and mindful what is said. If they call you pretty maid and chuck you neath the chin, don't you tell where no one is, nor yet where no one's been. Knocks and footsteps round the house, whistles after dark, you've no call for running out till the house dogs bark. Trust is here and Pincher's here, see how dumb they lie. They don't fret to follow when the gentlemen go by. If you do as you've been told, likely there's a chance you'll be in good. 25 ponies trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk. Them that asks no questions isn't told a lie. Watch the wall, my darling, while the gentlemen go by. And this is as this is turned into a bit of a Kipling fest. Let's go for the nation's favourite poem. That is If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. But yeah, that's what I do. And I think that's the last. That's where I'm going to end it today. I've really enjoyed this, so thank you very much for watching. I intend to do more of these live streams. If you find them helpful or enjoyable, then please leave a comment. Subscribe if you would like to see more of them. Click the little bell icon, because that makes it that means that you'll be notified when I sit down to do one of these. And yeah, if you would like to hear a poem, then please leave a comment saying, oh, I'd love to hear you read this one. Or if you want a particular theme of poetry, so for example, if you'd like me to read poems about history, if you would like me to read poems about theology, if you would like me to read poems about beekeeping. I don't know very many of those. Oh, there's Lake Isle of Innisfree, I suppose. You could argue for that one. Anyway, if there's any particular theme that you would like these live streams to take, please comment, let me know, leave me a message somewhere, and I will be glad to take your suggestions.